Hello, welcome to the Escape Podcast, your source for all good things in a galaxy far, far away. This is Brandon.
I'm Josh. Welcome back.
Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back.
What are we talking about today, Brandon?
Today is Star Wars.
Star Wars?
Star Wars 5.
Star Wars 5?
Yeah, you picked out Star Wars, the Phantom
See, I thought I picked
Empire.
part 2.
Is that what it is? Is it 5?
I think
is it
so.
2?
I say it's 2.
Alright. So is there
Star Wars, The Empire Strikes Back.
Is there anything else we wanted to get into before?
We should have talked about this beforehand.
We should have. We usually do. I can't think of anything, really.
The only thing I was going to briefly say, did you see the newest The Predator trailer?
No.
I don't know. I mean, I know it's not going to be great, but...
Oh, it's winning you back now?
Well, a little bit. Like, I was like, it kind of looks like it just knows what it is. You know, it's not, I don't think it's trying to thrive for, greatness. It's just a sci-fi action movie. I don't know. It actually looks like it might be fun.
All right.
I might see it eventually.
Make up
like
your mind.
2 years from now.
Yeah, when it comes out on Laserdisc.
Yes.
All right, so Star Wars. All right, so Star Wars. The Empire Strikes Back. This is the second part of the original trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
What year did it come out?
1980.
1980. Star Wars is a pretty popular topic nowadays.
No. Most people don't know about it. It's pretty underground.
All right, you got any trivia for us?
Yes. Yes, I do. Okay. So, yeah, Star Wars, The Empire Strikes Back from 1980. It was directed by Irvin Kershner. It stars Mark Hamill, Harrison Ford, Carrie Fisher, Billy Dee Williams, and Frank Oz. Co-starring Peter Mayhew, Alec Guinness, David Prowse, Anthony Daniels, Kenny Baker, and James Earl Jones. It was made on a budget of $18 million and made somewhere in the neighborhood of $585 million, although there are some conflicting reports on that. It has a critical Rotten Tomatoes score of 95 and audience score of 97%. The scene where Luke is hanging upside down and he retrieves his lightsaber was actually done by having him throw his lightsaber and then rewind it. Mark Hamill banged his head on Yoda's roof 16 times before Irving Kershner was satisfied. Many scenes had Carrie Fisher stand on a box so she could appear in frame with Harrison Ford, as she was 5'1" and he is 6'1". Mark Hamill did almost all his own stunts except for being sucked out the window in Cloud City. While filming on location in Norway, a snowstorm hit, causing them to be trapped in their hotel. Instead of wasting the day, Irving Kershner had Luke wander out from the hotel front door and film from inside the hotel. This was the scene where he was just leaving the Wampa cave. Jim Henson was asked to do Yoda, but had to turn it down due to the great Muppet caper. He suggested Frank Oz. Some of the asteroids were potatoes and even a shoe, although they have since been replaced in the newer versions.
No.
Yes. Lucas originally called this the worst Star Wars movie and apologized for it even existing.
And then he went on to make the Christmas special.
Actually, no, that would have been before this, actually.
Oh.
I think that came out in 79.
So he said that it was the worst Star Wars thing.
Even after that,
okay.
Yeah, isn't that amazing? There's some debate on whether or not Luke being attacked by the Wampa was added to cover his facial scars he received in a car accident from 1978, I think they said it was. Some say that scene was added just for that, and some say he had already healed up by that point. Alec Guinness, who did not want to reappear, finally agreed for 1 day of shooting. He arrived at 8:30 a.m. and completed all his scenes by 1 p.m. He was paid a quarter percentage of the film's gross, which was worth millions.
Wow.
Yeah. This is the only Star Wars movie that has a full-sized Millennium Falcon. The original Star Wars only had half of the set. The original version of the Emperor scene had an older woman in a hood with superimposed chimpanzee's eyes over hers and was voiced by Clive Revill. The Dagobah set was elevated so that Frank Oz could operate the Yoda puppet along with 3 other puppeteers below him. Irvin Kershner often would speak directions to Yoda instead of Frank Oz, and Mark Hamill had to have an earpiece so he could hear Frank Oz underneath the floor. The carbon freezing chamber is the only time in the original trilogy that Darth Vader and C-3PO are in the same room together. Boba Fett is never referred to by name, instead he's always called the Bounty Hunter. However, there was a deleted scene where Leia would have told Luke that Han Solo was taken by a bounty hunter named Boba Fett. This is the only movie of the original Star Wars trilogy that does not take place on Tatooine, although it is mentioned. Principal photography lasted 180 days, making it the longest shoot of any Star Wars movie.
What about Tatooine?
This is the only movie in the original trilogy that they never visited. Makeup artist Stuart Freeborn based Yoda's face partially on his own and Albert Einstein's. The filmmakers used children for extras in certain shots of the Rebel hangar to make the set seem larger than it really was. Boba Fett only has 5 lines, and this was the highest grossing film of 1980.
All right.
Yes.
Okay, so we just watched this.
Yeah, this is actually my second time in a row. I started this earlier today. I had to take a pause. I finished it just before you got here. Literally rewound it, put it back in the box, and let you pick which version you wanted to watch, and pulled it right back out and put it in again.
And what version did we watch?
We watched I think it's the truest to the original that you can get at this moment in time. It is my 1995 VHS version. I'll put a picture of it on the Facebook. It was before, obviously, the 97 special edition, and then obviously they kind of redid the special edition again in 2004 for the first DVD release. And I want to say they even tweaked some stuff again when they finally released it in, I want to say, 2009 for the Blu-rays. So every time they released it, they changed something. And what's crazy is, like, the scene where Luke's falling. In the original version, he just falls silently. In the 97 special edition, he screams. And then by the time they did it again in 2004, they took out the scream. So there's just some really ridiculous stuff going, on there. So, anyway.
They can't ever just leave it alone.
Yeah. So, anyway, we watched the truest to the original as possible right now. Supposedly, it will eventually
It's
be
funny
released.
because people give Ted Turner a lot of crap for, like, colorizing classic black and white movies and stuff like that. But, like, George Lucas...
But he gives you a choice, too.
Well, George Lucas can't leave his own stuff alone. It's considered... the Star Wars, the original trilogy, is considered one of the greatest some of the greatest movies ever made. Mm-hmm. And he can't leave it alone. He's got to add little tiny little things that don't matter.
And, some of them I actually do kind of like.
Like the creature outside of Mos Eisley?
Creature outside of Mos Eisley?
Yeah, that CG thing.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Or, wait. Oh, yeah, the little rats, the wampas, or whatever.
I don't know.
Yeah. So, how did you read the opening crawl?
I didn't.
I usually don't. Like, when I was a kid, I used to read it because I used to watch these movies. I read the second half of it. Yeah, I used to watch these movies all the time when I was growing up, but nowadays, if I ever pop one in, I almost never read that.
It's funny, when I was reading it, I was talking about how, like, Luke was leading his part of the rebellion, and they were down on the Hoth. Compared to nowadays Star Wars, like, it's so satisfying to watch a good Star Wars movie as opposed to some of the newer ones, which are maybe okay at best, I think. I don't know. Some people really like them, but I don't know. I really don't like what they did with Luke in the newest one.
Well, here's something I want to know. Okay, I know they don't exactly name the amount of time between the first Star Wars and Empire Strikes Back, but I find it funny that an outlaw, a smuggler, and a farm boy have now risen in ranks of the the rebel forces, like that they're Captain Solo, and I don't know, it just seems like, I mean, I'm sure they've done some training to learn some tactics and whatever, but I found it funny that they were that high ranking at this point. I don't know, did that strike you at all or not really?
I was thinking about it a little. It was a contrast to me, like how Luke's just a hermit living on his own little world, all alone, grumpy and depressed about everything. And then he comes to get visited by Rey, and he won't train Rey. He's not interested in helping her out. He's telling her that the Jedi don't matter, but Yoda clearly says that the Jedi are good and that the dark side is purely evil. It's not anything that needed to be balanced. Evil needed to be wiped out back then.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So, here's a question for you. Does the Wampa have, like, freeze breath or something? How does he get Luke frozen to the ceiling? You ever wondered that?
He just, like, maybe stuck him up there and spit on his feet or
maybe.
Or something like that.
And here's another thing. Like, the Wampa, I feel like they look different from shot to shot. Like, when they showed that close-up of the puppet when it first like kills the Tauntaun and then knocks him out or whatever. Like, it looked a certain way, and then like in 97 when they redid it and they had a full bodysuit that a guy was wearing, it looked completely different from even that. And then there's a deleted scene for this movie where Wampas actually infiltrate the rebel base, which is hilarious. It's on YouTube, and I'll tell you more about that in a second. But they look different to me than even the puppet from the original, the hand puppet that just comes up.
I don't know. I'm picturing the beast from Rudolph.
I could see that, yeah. So I'll mention it while we're talking about it, kind of. So there was a deleted scene, like I said, and Wampas infiltrate the base. In fact, you can see evidence of it still in the finished product when Han Solo is going to find out, hey, has Luke came in the south door or whatever. They show two guys looking down at a dead Tauntaun, and he looks down at it for half a second, then he says, hey, has Commander Luke, or whatever his title is, come into the South Passage? The reason that thing is dead is because they're finding out that they're infiltrating the base. Anyway, you find out that they somehow are able to trap them in this room, and they just seal the door, and they put a yellow note, like "Do not enter" sign,
like a Post-it note.
Essentially, I mean, it's probably about the size of a sheet of paper, but it's like a "Do not endanger, do not enter this room." During the scene where they're trying to escape on the Millennium Falcon, once the stormtroopers have
Han rips the note off.
C-3PO does.
C-3PO does. Okay.
Rips the note off, and they actually show a scene where 3 stormtroopers go open. It sounds like a joke. 3 stormtroopers open the door, and literally you see this big giant hand come out, grab one of them by the head, pull him in, and then the door shut again. And then they actually put their ear to the door, and you're hearing like yelling and like growling. And then Vader walks up, and they look like, well, what do we do now? And you hear all this screaming and stuff, and then Vader just walks away, and they're just kind of like left there like, I guess Frank's gone. Like it's so comical, it's ridiculous.
Huh. Yeah, I'll have to check that out.
Yeah. Another thing I thought was kind of funny, when Luke is still hanging, he's just about to get his lightsaber, maybe he has, they show like a close-up of the Wampa's like side and arms, and it doesn't look like it's walking. It looks like something is being pulled on like a track. Did you notice that?
No.
It just looks like it's sliding across the room. No?
No.
Alright, great.
So one of the things I noticed about these early hot scenes is the droid when they sent the probes out.
Yes.
The probe droid, I thought itself kind of looked evil, the way they designed it.
Yeah.
It was all black. It had the spidery arms and it was floating around. Yeah. I thought that was a pretty cool touch.
No, yeah, there's great design in Star Wars. That one thing I've always praised Star Wars for is like the ships look very different. The aliens are very unique. Usually some of them, look better than others. And I'm not trying to knock Star Wars because I do like the uniformity of like Federation ships. They all have, for the most part, this saucer section, the neck, the body, and the two nacelles.
And they're gray and blue.
You could just tell they belong to the same fleet, and that is cool. But Star Wars has a lot of really unique designs, and it just seems very big. Like, the way you could go to another country and see, the way their cars look or whatever. It's just kind of cool.
The other thing I noticed that had to do with that droid, the probe sent back pictures of the base to the Empire, right?
Yes.
So they're arguing about it. The two guys at the beginning, they're arguing. It's detected signs. This could be them. Well, if we investigated everything, it'd take us forever.
He says it could have been smugglers. He did. I get what you're saying. Yeah, the admiral at the time.
It just seems so ridiculous.
He goes, we have thousands of probes. He says something like, it could be smugglers. It could be anything. But yeah.
I thought it was just ridiculous. Like, why argue over it? They had a clear photo of the base.
Yeah.
I'm sure it looked different than any smuggler base.
Yeah, I don't know. Did you notice very early on, C-3PO and R2-D2 are talking to each other, and C-3PO says, like, I nearly commented that the princess's chambers are freezing. And then, R2-D2 beeps, and then he goes, well, they're supposed to be freezing. And then he goes, oh, switch off. I was like, wait a minute. Why would her quarters, why are they supposed to be freezing?
Because she's as cold as ice.
Yeah, I guess so.
So, at the end of the last one, they blow up the Death Star.
Word.
Now, in this one, they're kind of like in the middle of making a comeback, like taking out the Empire, right?
Double word.
Do you see growth in the characters when we start off?
To a degree, I guess. Maybe not a whole lot.
I did. I thought there was...
I definitely... If you look at Luke, he's the most naive, like, childlike in the first one. He's right in the middle in the second one. And then, of course, you get to the third one. He's the most confident and skilled. So I would see it mostly with him than any other ones. But yeah, I guess. I mean, I still feel like Han Solo pretty much acted like Han Solo. You know, in fact, I almost feel like maybe he's more like a cowboy in this one than the previous. So Luke is in the cave. Why not just kill the monster and stay in the cave like until the storm breaks? Why would you venture out? You know, he was able to disarm it. I would just kill it.
I don't know, maybe he didn't know how many were in there, if he could take them all.
He can take them all.
Or he could get lost in the cave.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't venture farther in the cave. I'd just stay right there, wait for the storm myself, but whatevs. Alright, continue. So like we said, we watched this old 95 tape, and I was looking at certain things, like, for instance, when... Is it Wedge is searching for them after the snowstorm? And you see, like, his dashboard of his little, you know, plane. And I noticed, like, you could almost barely see any lights or anything on it. And what's funny is, like, now they just decked... Everything's just flooded with stuff. And even certain things that were in English, he has changed over to be, like, you know, the fictional language, written language that's in all these movies. I just think it's funny how just everything's so decked out, lit up. You know, well, that's a different movie, but I'm trying not to venture too far, but we'll get to that later.
Okay.
Just how he overdoes things. Like, in the first movie, when Han Solo is chasing those guys, there was like 6 guys at the end of the hallway. And then in the newer version, he added like 60 guys.
You're talking about George Lucas?
George Lucas.
Okay.
I mean, yeah. And then in the next movie, R2-D2, when he gets electrocuted, like, maybe 8 little utensils, you know, come out, and like he's like shocked. And in the newer version, there's like 80 different things coming off of him. Do you know what I'm talking about? All right, forget it. Anyway, it's just funny how he always feels the need to deck out everything to the extreme, you know, in all the newer updates.
We had your VHS started off with a little interview with George Lucas. I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, I did. And did you notice in that interview that him and Leonard Maltin always refer to them as the first one, the second one, the third one, the trilogy, part 1, part 2? He never once says this episode 4, 5, 6 crap. It's always...
When did they add that?
Well, I've heard, at least for Star Wars, the original film, that it was 4 years later before they added the subtitle A New Hope. And I'm going to put it on the Facebook. I looked up all the old theatrical posters for this movie. It never once says Episode 5. It's always Star Wars, The Empire Strikes Back. Nothing about in there. It's all original.
When was the first one you saw that said that?
Probably for the 2004 DVD release that I'm aware of. I mean, maybe it was sooner than that, but that's the first time I recall seeing the, like, on the packaging. When the special
editions came out, didn't they have episode 4, 5, 6? Didn't it say that?
I don't know if it's on the packaging of it. I could pull it off.
Go grab it.
Oh, fine.
I think for sure that it does.
I think you're wrong.
It doesn't say 4, 5, 6 on it?
That one says Star Wars Special Edition, nothing else. Empire Strikes Back Special Edition, nothing else. Return of the Jedi.
Look at the sides. Oh.
Yeah. So, again, on the packaging, the first time I recall seeing it was in the DVD release.
It seems like such a part of it, too, that they were called that. But it's more of a modern thing, I suppose. Lucas likes to say he always had everything planned out.
Dude, absolutely not. Because here's the thing. Everyone talks about the kiss in this movie. Yes, but if you realize there was, like... She kissed him several times in the first movie, like before they swing across that cavern. Obviously, this is a different kind of kiss. You know, when he first opens up the cell, she's kind of, hey, look at her, you know, like laid out on the little prison bed, you know, some shape going on, some waves. And he's kind of checking her out. To me, I don't believe that he always had this planned out. Because
I wasn't talking about that specifically. I was talking about the whole overarching story.
Oh, well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. But it's, to me, that supports your claim that if he had this all figured out, I find it hard to believe he would have said, let's have this brother and sister kind of have this little flirtation where...
Well, they didn't know. I never had the problem with the kiss. I know everybody likes to bring that up and make fun of it. It made sense to me. She was trying to make Han jealous, and there's another guy.
I get it, but, like, again, like, it's just so weird. If he knew in his mind that this was always going to be her brother, it seems a weird choice to, like, I'll have her brother be the guy that she's... But, I don't know.
She wasn't interested in him.
But it seemed like when you see Luke and him and her all together after, you know, he gets out of that tank... It seems like Luke looks a little jealous almost to her. Like when Han says, you didn't see us in the South Passage, she expressed her true feelings toward me. Like Luke actually looks a little like jealous, like, you know, I don't know.
Oh, I didn't pick that up. But I was thinking more like the prequels and stuff. He said he had the prequels written along with the original story.
Yeah, I don't.
And then supposedly he had 7, 8, and 9 ready too. He had like ideas for that. Before
I don't
he
believe
ever,
that. Yeah, I don't believe any of that.
Yeah, I don't. I think he's these first 3 movies are so good. It's weird to think that he, like, I think he's kind of, I don't know, a little arrogant, kind of stupid.
When I was a kid and I would watch these tapes, and they have the little interview like you said, from the way, I don't know if it's the way Leonard Maltin's interviewing him or the way he's just answering the questions. I actually thought, like, wow, George Lucas was, like, writing this and directing this, and he was, like, doing all the special effects by himself, and he, like, I really, like, thought he was, like, just this one-man army of talent, you know? Like,
he makes it sound like that. I think what happened is he had such a hard time making that first one that he burned himself out for the rest of time to where he couldn't really put it all into another movie again. So now he'll pass things off, but like he still likes to take all the credit.
I think personally, I see him better as an ideal man and letting someone else execute it, usually. I mean, not every instance, but like for the most part, I think other people do better with stuff than he does. I think he can come up with some good concepts, but then the other guys actually take the time to develop it. You know, like for instance, Raiders of the Lost Ark, I spoke on this last time, but they said that he did not want to do the snake pit scene when Indy opens up the tomb and there's all the snakes. Steven Spielberg decided to do it because George Lucas said he just was too lazy or something. Like it just would have taken too much time to get all those snakes.
I've heard him complain about the weirdest things. Like he says the worst things about movies are actors. So he'd rather, and you know, we saw it with the prequels, he'd rather CG and green screen everything.
I remember seeing an early thing when especially these were really coming back in popularity. They obviously re-released it in 97, special edition, so exciting. And there was an interview with him where he was talking about, oh yeah, in a few years, you know, we're going to be able to do movies without any actors. Like, it's all going to be in the computer. And like, but he was saying it like it was a positive thing.
Yeah.
Anyway, so the scene that we were just kind of talking about when, you know, they were arguing about, you know, there's so many bases. How do you know that's it? That's it. And I thought it's funny is he turns around real sharp and there's a guy like almost right in his face. It just looked like, I don't know, maybe it's just me finding humor in this, but he turns around so sharply and he's right in that guy's face. It almost looks like they were going to smack into each other. I just thought it was funny. No? Okay, great. Move on.
I didn't notice it. One of the things that I did think was kind of funny, and I laughed, and I think you looked over at me like, what are you laughing at? Was when the big walkers are coming towards the rebel base, and the guy is inside of one of them, and he's talking to Darth Vader.
Yes.
And you see just like this little tiny miniature hologram of Darth Vader looking up at him. It just looks so funny because like he's the big bad guy
and they made him look small.
Yeah, and here he is just like a little thing, like you could smash him. You know, I know it's just a hologram, but it still is pretty funny. Like he's looking up at the guy, and the guy's like 20 times his size. Yeah.
So, well, that's funny. They reversed that in The Force Awakens, but
yeah,
that's all I'll say about that. So there's a scene where Han Solo's on top, and you know he says, "Okay, you know they're trying to fix the Millennium Falcon, whatever's wrong with it." And he tells Chewie to start it up, and you see all these like little smoke explosions going off in Ford's face. He's like, shut it off, shut it off. I bet you any money that is not Ford there. I don't know. He seems the type, a little high maintenance. I bet you he fussed about having these go off in his face. I almost wonder if that was a stunt double, because you never see his face. You just hear his voice. Did you ever get that vibe? Like, he just, I don't know. I just can't see him doing that, per se.
Yeah, I didn't see that. I wasn't looking for that.
Okay, shut up. This is, you were kind of talking about the hologram. This is the only Star Wars movie that I can think of, and I could be wrong, where they actually use a view screen similar to, like, Star Trek at one point in the film.
Yeah, what point was that?
Anytime Vader's sitting in his little, like, round chair, remember? Yeah. He turns around, there's a view screen, and that's where he, you failed me for the last time, and he strangles that guy, you're in command. They basically use a Star Trek style view screen, but every other time, it's always a holographic projection.
Yeah. And you and I have different ideas about this. I think it's a fantasy film with sci-fi elements. You think it's a sci-fi film with fantasy elements.
Absolutely. I mean, even if you look at, like, Star Trek Deep Space Nine, there's certain fantasy elements to that where the prophets basically have, these gods, and these, essentially they're like infinity stones that do different things, time and space and whatever else, just like that. So yeah, there's a very fantasy...
DS9 is a Western.
A fantasy, like, element to that, just like I think overall this is a sci-fi film with some fantasy influence, definitely. But I think it's...
I always view it the other way around.
That's fine.
It's not about the technology or the science of anything.
That's fine, yeah.
But there is a good amount of technology in this.
Well, dude, there's aliens, robots, different planets, spaceships.
What's the difference between an alien and an elf?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So one of the things... I think out of all the Star Wars movies...
Well, hold on. At least in the fantasy movie, they're theoretically all from the same world.
Just like all from the same galaxy.
I guess, but they're literally from the same rock. Whereas this, they could be from multiple places,
So?
Okay, anyway. Well, I'm just saying.
So,
it's broader.
I think this is actually the most quoted Star Wars movie.
Probably, although misquoted.
Well, some of it, yeah. But they have things like, never tell me the odds, I thought they smelled bad on the inside. When Luke says he's not afraid, Yoda says, you will be.
Yeah.
Do or do not, there is no try. Laugh it up, fuzzball. That is why you fail. I am your father, I know.
It's, no, I am your father. That's the one that's often misquoted, actually, is Vader's line. Luke, well, people, I am your father, is what people say. It's actually, no, I am your father.
Right. And supposedly that was kept secret from everybody. Except for James Earl Jones, basically, and the editors.
They said that Lawrence Kasdan, who I think was the scriptwriter, knew. Lucas obviously knew because he told him. Irvin Kershner knew. Mark Hamill found out right before they started filming, and then James Earl Jones. And supposedly the actual line that... Because David Prowse, the guy who was acting in the suit, was speaking dialogue, so that obviously people could have something to speak back and, know their cues and their stuff. But so the line they gave him was, Obi-Wan never, told you what happened to your father.
I killed your father?
Obi-Wan killed your father.
Obi-Wan killed your father.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which also would have actually been a pretty interesting twist. Had that stayed, like, just the idea that Obi-Wan killed his father, that would have been kind of interesting, too. But, I'm glad they didn't. Just kind of cool.
Yeah.
A cool idea to speculate what that would have been like. So the Star Destroyers, I noticed, okay, so they're trying to escape the base. They're going straight up. Are the Star Destroyers pretty much surrounding the whole planet?
Yes.
Okay, I was going to say, I didn't get that impression because I was thinking, like, why not kind of cruise around the other side of the planet or something, or cruise away off to the side and then kind of, jettison why I have to go straight up and out, because I didn't get the impression they were surrounded by the entire planet.
I don't know.
All right. The Imperial Walker scene, it's a great scene in the movie, but how practical are those things for real?
I was thinking about that while we were watching it.
The Star Wars prequels did it worse with these very animal-like robot vehicles, but I mean, I don't know, they just don't seem very useful in real combat. I mean, they're super slow. Mm-hmm. They could easily trip on something, or in this case, get exploited through that. I don't know. I just don't get it, but whatevs. It looks great.
Watching that cool scene, it reminded me, the first game I had, I got the GameCube the night it came out, and the first game, I think it may have even came with it, was like Rogue Squadron.
I remember that, yeah.
And one of the first missions you had to do was tie those things up. And
I remember going to, because it had a third-person aspect, right, too?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember going to Meijer, which is, I don't know, depending on what state you're in, I don't know if they even have them. I don't think they're everywhere. But kind of like a Walmart, better. And they had this little video game like section, and I remember they had like the GameCube, the Xbox, and I guess that probably would have been the PS2, right? And I remember playing it, and I thought it was the greatest thing at the time.
That GameCube was a good system, yeah.
Well, I'm not saying the GameCube.
Well, that game too was sweet.
The game, yeah. I do, like I said, I'm not trying to knock the Imperial Walkers, just saying not very practical, but the look of them, the way they move, like you feel like when a step goes, you feel like there's real weight to it. I just thought that was a lot of detail. They did a good job making it
one
seem
of the
like
things that Lucas was talking about. One of the things Lucas was talking about in that early interview on the VHS tape you have was how in this one he got to use a lot of stop-go animation, and I thought that was really cool. I love stop animation.
He said stop motion specifically. Yeah. Isn't stop... Are you talking about go motion?
It's the same thing.
Kinda. It's similar. They say go motion's actually smoother.
What's the difference?
I just said it. Go motion is like
you take a picture, you move it a little. You take another picture, you move it a little.
Yes, in the way it's executed. But I'm saying
it's the same word for the same thing. It's two different words.
Stop
for the same
motion
thing.
And go motion. It's like a flip phone versus an iPhone. Like, yeah, they both are phones, yes, and you use them the same in that way. But
what's go? How do you do go then?
I don't know. I didn't invent it. I don't do it. But I know that go motion was originally going to be used in Jurassic Park. And they actually ditched it for computer animation. However, they kept it for all the, what's it called, where they shoot like
I've never heard that. I always assumed...
a miniature... What is it called when they shoot a miniature, like, to show how it's going to play out? Instead of using storyboards, now they're using a lot of, like, computer animation.
Yeah.
Well, and when they did Jurassic Park, they actually used the go motion.
It's stop-go animation.
I was told it was a newer version.
Where did you hear that from?
From the special features.
Of what?
Jurassic Park.
That go animation is different than
stop. That go motion is a newer, smoother technique of stop motion. It's the next generation, so to speak. It's supposed to look a lot cleaner.
All right, well, we're going to have to look that up.
Fine,
I don't know what the differences are.
Again, I'm saying, yes, it's the same principles, but it's just...
I quit! Shh. Okay.
It's updated. It's amazing to me with all the tech in the Star Wars universe, the holographic telephone calls look terrible. Everyone must be using Sprint or something, you know? I mean,
yeah, probably.
They, like, you notice that every time someone's using a hologram, it looks like butt anuses.
Yes.
But what's funny, in the 2004 version, when they actually got the actor who played the Emperor and all the others, it's crystal clear for the first time. And what's stupid about that is they show his face, which... I mean, clear as day.
You're talking about the Emperor?
Yeah, in the the 97 version.
Yeah.
Or maybe it was the 2004 DVD release, whichever. They show his face clear as day. Now, Lucas is real big on liking to say, doing stuff where it's like, hey, look at this. This is relating to that. This is, that throwaway line from this movie? Well, here's that thing, and... He ruins movies for first-time viewers. So if for kids coming up who are never seen these movies, it's not a big reveal, but still, like, to show the Emperor's face fully before you get to see him in person. He
reminds me of when Han, C-3PO told Han what was wrong with something. He's like, we need to change the power coupling or whatever. Mm-hmm. And he's like, yeah, I knew that. And then he walks over to Chewie and he kind of whispers it to him. Hey, change that power coupling, Mm-hmm. That's what he reminds me of. It's like, yeah, I knew that all the time. I did that intentionally.
Yeah. It's funny you kind of mentioned that. I was thinking about how when they were trying to escape, once they leave Hoth and they're running away from the... Luke he gets in his X-Wing, he leaves, and he has no problem. The Millennium Falcon leaves, and they are chased by all these Star Destroyers. But at one point, C-3PO tells them exactly what's damaged, and then they're like looking at all this stuff and they're naming off stuff. No, that's not it. Try this. And I was like, wait a minute, didn't he just tell you point blank what he noticed was the problem? So why are they looking at all this other crap? Do you know what I'm saying or no? No?
Yep.
Alright. C-3PO tells them specifically, I noticed the hyperdrive motivator, or whatever he calls it, I don't know, is damaged. It's impossible to go to light speed. So then later, him and Chewie, while they're being chased by all these TIE fighters and crap, are like naming off stuff like, check this. No, that's not it. Okay, maybe it's that. Check that. But like, he actually told them point blank, it's this. But they're still looking at all this other crap.
They're really looking for other options.
Shut up. Alright. I thought it was funny how Luke pretty much is single-handedly taking down these AT-ATs, ATs, whatever you want to call them. You know, like, granted, he had to have the guy,
He's got the Force with him.
Yeah, I guess. He had to have the other guy, like, tie it up, but it was his idea. Mm-hmm. He's the one, like, you know, Spider-Man up there and blowing it up. It's just funny to me. No one else is able to do anything. Did you notice when the walker or whatever thing is about to shoot this shield generator, it shoots one lone guy and then shoots the big gun at the shield generator?
Does it?
Yeah. So like they show these guys, there are these guys running away, and it gets into position and it like shoots one little guy dead, and then it shoots the actual generator. I just thought it was funny that, like, what was the point in that?
They shoot him.
I guess one guy.
Yeah, he's rebel scum.
There's a lot of good humor, and not saying that the other ones have crappy humor, but like I think the humor was best in this. You know, would it help if I got it on push? It might. You know, or you know, he has to do the Fonzie where he starts the engine, you know, he hits it. Like just little stuff like that is funny compared to the other ones. I just found this one probably
now they try to do
the
like
best humor, but not like forcing it.
Ironic, we're in a bad situation, just make a joke. Marvel humor.
Yeah, I suppose, but I think it's even better than that. I think Marvel.
Well, one of the big complaints about the Last Jedi was the humor and how horrible it was. And the half that I watched, I didn't laugh once, and I thought it was all stupid.
You're stupid. No, I we'll get to that movie eventually, but yeah, I didn't walk out of the theater happy with that one. Just to say, let's leave it at that for now. So, from a are you okay?
Mm-hmm.
From a technical point of view, I thought it was amazing how I'm still trying to figure out exactly how they did it. They showed like, you know, the Millennium Falcon's doing barrel rolls, and these TIE fighters are just turning on a dime. All this stuff that I'm assuming these are still. I don't know how are they doing it, but like
they have turned the camera.
I guess, but like it was pretty impressive because you would see the Millennium Falcon do this like spin, and the other ships around it weren't. So I don't know how they're getting the camera to rotate to make that one ship look like it's turning on a dime like that, while all these other ones don't. You know, to make it.
Maybe they superimpose them all together.
Possibly, yeah. I mean, well, yeah. I'm just saying it was pretty impressive. There was a lot more movement to the ships, and you know,
there was a physical stunt that happened in this where I was wondering how they did it, but now I can't remember what it was.
Way to go! I thought they did a great job with the asteroid field, like the actual asteroids, and especially like the giant. I guess that was still an asteroid. I don't think it was like a planet or a moon or whatever that they land on. Just the detail, like. It was top notch.
It's kind of a cool idea that they went into this asteroid cave, but it wasn't a cave. It was actually inside of a creature.
Yeah, like it must have been had its mouth open.
What I was wondering was, what the heck does that thing eat?
Yeah, I don't know.
It's so big.
I don't know. Maybe there's something else living on.
Maybe it actually eats asteroids.
Or maybe they eat each other. The cannibals.
Like a can of balls?
Yes.
Dagobah looked great.
No, it didn't. No, yeah, you're right. Yeah, Dagobah, Cloud City, obviously the Hoth was actually not really a set. They were actually outdoors.
Cloud City. Like, all the locations are great, but, like, Dagobah looked really cool. We just did The Dark Crystal.
No, we didn't.
Which was another Frank Oz movie.
No, we didn't. I wasn't there. I don't know what you're talking about. Maybe you did it on your channel, Movie Film Presents. Check it out.
Another Frank Oz movie, and they were saying that they wanted Jim Henson to be Yoda. And can you imagine Jim Henson doing Yoda instead of Frank Oz?
No, but I don't know. I'm not sure. He might have been able to do something cool with it. We would never know.
It would have had like a Rolf the dog voice.
I guess I don't know Jim Henson's voice well enough to.
You know, Rolf the dog. I guess I can't do it either. But yeah, the Frank Oz ended up being perfect for that part. They the puppet for Yoda was really good.
Yeah, and I was reading how he was actually made out of different types of materials, so he was heavier than what Frank Oz was used to doing. So they had to kind of break up the shooting of those scenes because he had to take breaks. It was such a strain on his arms.
Well, who made it?
I don't know exactly who made it. I know that
I assumed it would have been people from the Henson Company.
That one guy I named designed it, but I don't know if he actually made it.
Hmm.
Not remember.
So the way that Yoda moved around and everything, I thought looked really good.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
there's that one shot where he's walking away. He's like, come on, come with me. Like, I don't know how they did that, because like he's actually like, you see him walking, like the whole body moving, and he turns back, speaks, and signals with his arm. Like, I don't know how they did that.
There's lots of fog. Could you see his feet?
I thought so. I mean, that one scene could have been a little person or something. I don't know. I'm not really sure. But I remember when I was a kid.
Or a little kid even.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe having like the sets around him even bigger to give him the appearance of looking even. I don't know. When I was a kid, I remember. So, I think I said this before. The Star Wars trilogy, the Indiana Jones trilogy, and the Back to the Future trilogy, I all saw with my dad. He had never seen any of them. These were movies that he, heard people talk about, and a friend of my sister's dad had them, and she like let us borrow them. And I remember when me and my dad first watched these movies, we didn't. Obviously, most people don't know who Yoda is. But when I more recently watched the trailer for this movie, I was very disappointed to find out that they spoil that Yoda is not, because like the whole thing is that Yoda seems like this little goofy, silly creature. You think that he's going to lead Luke to Yoda, and then maybe that might be the end of him. Turns out he is Yoda, but the trailer totally gives that away, and it's such a bummer that they did that for back in the day that, people kind of had an idea what was going on
I guess
already.
Trailers have been ruining things for people for many years. Don't you miss the days whenever you'd think of a trilogy, like those were the only ones that would come to your mind?
Yeah, but for me too, and this is going to seem really dorky, I guess, but me and my dad also watched at that time there was only 3 of them, the Next Generation movies. And those 4 sets of trilogies always stick in my mind as being like the movies.
Is that really even a trilogy though? Because
at the time it was, because Nemesis didn't exist, and we never watched the
Is
originals.
having 2 sequels automatically make it a trilogy, or is a trilogy a continuing story? Because those are really separate stories.
True, but
they didn't build off of each other.
It's a box set over there. If you look over there,
does it say trilogy?
No. Well, actually, I think it does.
All right, pull it out.
Anyway, okay, it is called the Star Trek Next Generation Movie Collection, which consists of Generations, First Contact, and Insurrection, which were the only 3 Next Gen movies at that time. But anyway, so yeah, I always had Back to the Future, the Next Gen trilogy, if you will, movies, Star Wars, and Indiana Jones.
Okay. Those
were the ones I always watched. Or hold them. Yeah. There's a special place because I especially remember watching it with my dad. That it's special. So I thought it was funny. Yoda says that the cave or whatever is strong with the dark side. Mm-hmm. I thought it was kind of odd. Why did he set up shop so close to it? And you would think that if it's strong with the dark side for whatever reason, wouldn't maybe that help Vader or whoever know where he's at, or possibly even be a source of could possibly turn him a possession, almost bad influence on him. I just thought it was funny that he set up his home so close to something like that. I don't know.
Well, he's a Jedi Master. I'm sure he's above all that at that point. And then,
still giving away his location though, at the very least.
What, because you think Darth Vader could sense him?
Well, they sense all kinds of crap. They're apparently able to sense many things through, which is also strange.
No,
that
because
he didn't know
if that were
Luke
the case,
was his kid.
He would have been able to find Obi-Wan and Luke and all that stuff sooner too, if that were the case.
Yeah, but they weren't set up shop near a dark side.
How do you know?
Cave. All right, you know what I mean. Shut up. So, again, I always have praised Star Wars as a whole for its unique creature designs and various things. However, I this is a very small thing. It's a nitpick, I know. I think I don't like how they added in Dagobah, like, snakes and lizards and stuff like that. It's just... See, like, the Dark Crystal, I know it came out a couple years later, but, like, every little animal in the background, whether it's pointless or not, is, like, so crazy looking and otherworldly. And since a lot of this is Jim Henson stuff, at least I think, it's just kind of a bummer. They're like, just get a lizard, get a snake. I don't know. It just feels like, I don't know, not special.
I always got the impression that stuff wasn't really there. It was all in Luke's head.
What gives you that impression?
Just like Darth Vader was in his head. Like he was just seeing things that he...
Why snakes and lizards?
Things that would scare him, things that were associated with evil and the dark side.
So, I don't know if this is what they were going for, but there's a lot of Star Trek type things briefly mentioned in the Star Wars movies, but they're mentioned very in passing, but they never expand upon them. And some of them I noticed were shields, tractor beams, cloaking device, and sensors. But then what I find funny is, the garbage scene. They're right on the hull of that one Star Destroyer, but yet that Star Destroyer nor any other Star Destroyer around it can sense them and notices it. Luke says he's scanning, there's life forms down there, there's something alive. But then, again, they never... I don't know, it's just weird like that. Have you ever noticed stuff like that? They'll mention stuff, but then practical applications, they never use it. Or never seems to be a thing.
Maybe it wasn't all that good.
Uh-huh. Alright, move on. Okay, well, how about this? Like, why is it when the Slave One is right behind the Millennium Falcon, they don't know it?
The what?
Slave One.
Millennium Falcon doesn't have rear view mirror.
It supposedly has sensors.
Maybe, well, it's a bounty ship. Maybe it does something to hide itself from sensors.
That would be a cloaking device.
Sure, it had one then.
Deflector array.
A police jammer.
Lucas often would talk about Flash Gordon. I want to say he even mentioned Buck Rogers as influence, but never Star Trek. Yet, there is the original series episode from Season 3 called The Cloud Miners, and it actually features a city in the clouds.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember that one?
No.
It's just funny because, again, most people would always think, hey, a city in the clouds, Cloud City, Star Wars. They never would think of Star Trek, but they technically did it first in 1969.
I haven't seen all the original episodes, so I don't remember if I've seen that one or not.
You're an idiot.
Did it look cool?
I'll show you exactly what it looked like because I saved a picture because I figured you may not know. I think this is from that's the remastered version, and then there's a close-up. But again, this is the remastered version, so it looks better than...
So it's literally like buildings floating on clouds. That's kind of funny.
Well, I'm assuming it's... there's probably Star Trek, again, very grounded in the science of things for the most part. There's probably some kind of... The base of the city probably has something that's...
Well, back then, I don't know if it was as much sciencey.
Honestly, I would almost...
The original series?
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff There's actually a pretty good explanation for how the Universal Translator works in the original series that I can't remember exactly how he explains it, but I was like... I mean, it's far-fetched, but they make it sound so probable that it could almost exist. Anyway, back to bases. So, C-3PO opens a room on Cloud City, and you hear this voice. They make it purposely try to disguise it. It's supposed to be a stormtrooper, but stormtroopers typically have that sound to their voice. You can kind of tell it's them. And he's like, "Who are you? What are you doing here?" And he gets shot. And I was like, why would he shoot a robot? Like, there's other units in that city that look just like C-3PO. C-3PO even sees one, and it said, how rude. So, why was this stormtrooper...
What was he blabbing about when he walked in? Because I'm sure he was talking. There's no way he was quiet for a second.
Maybe. Yes, he was talking, but I'm saying the fact that he goes, "Who are you? What are you doing here?" And then he just shoots this robot, and I'm like...
Maybe he was the first droid that walked in babbling about crap, so he knew immediately.
Oh, I know what he's doing. He hears what sounds like an R2 unit, and he goes, "I hear an R2 unit. I wonder if that's..." And then he walks in the room to see if it was R2-D2 by chance.
I did think that was a lot, though, too.
Yeah, because...
they don't know it's C-3PO.
Exactly. They don't know it's the guys we're looking for is a droid, especially when there's other droids on the ship that look just like them.
And these aren't the droids you're looking for.
Yes. I found it weird that Obi-Wan says that boy is our last hope, and then Yoda says, no, there is another. I would almost think that should be the opposite. Now that Obi-Wan is truly one with the Force, I would think he would know way more than Yoda would at that point.
Okay, yeah. I found that line particularly interesting for multiple reasons. One, well, you assume that he's talking about Leia.
Word.
But it doesn't make sense for him to be talking about Leia at that point, because they were just talking about how Leia and everybody was at the Cloud City and they were in danger, and he didn't know if they were going to live or die. So Leia is trapped. How is she also a hope if she's trapped and captured? And would there be time to train her? She's just as old as Luke is. And one of his problems with Luke is Luke was too old. And she had 0 training already from Obi-Wan.
I don't know.
So, who was the other then, if it wasn't Leia? So there's somebody else floating around in the Star Trek or Star Wars universe that is just as capable as Luke was to take out the Empire.
Well, he says there is another. That to me implies one more. Like, I don't know. If I say...
He probably was talking about Leia, like they were planting that seed.
Yeah.
But it didn't make sense. Also, here's the other thing. In the new, one of the problems a lot of people have with the new Star Wars crap is that anybody can use the Force. It doesn't matter. You can do whatever you want. But clearly back then, like, something was very special about Luke that he could use it. Something's very special about Darth Vader that he could use it.
His midi-chlorians or whatever.
There is one other. There aren't many others. There's one other.
You ever wonder how Vader eats?
Also, hold on, about Yoda. They also made it clear that Yoda was the one that trained Obi-Wan. But when you go back to the prequels, they have Qui-Gon Jinn running around all over the place with them.
I agree. I think I brought this up when me and Dave did Star Wars.
I didn't do that Star Wars with you guys. How did that go?
Basically, that I'm pretty sure I pointed out that it didn't make sense that they say that, yeah, Yoda trained Obi-Wan, but then you find out it's Qui-Gon Jinn. How does that work?
And Yoda just sat around in a council.
Yeah, I guess he oversaw. I don't know. I'm just
Luke,
it's so stupid. I know, but this was all planned out.
Yeah.
So, and that's what's funny to me. Okay, you got 10 Star Trek movies, and there's less inconsistencies in those 10 movies written by numerous people, directed by numerous people with different cast, set all these years apart, and you had at this point 6 Star Wars movies, supposedly all written by the same guy, this mastermind genius, George Lucas, and yet there's so many more inconsistencies.
Well, you can't blame the new ones on them, but yeah, the prequels, there were inconsistencies, and the prequels were not that great. I think people are starting to look back at them a little more fondly now that the new ones are out and suck so bad.
Honestly, as I watched this movie, it made me realize how much you really don't need to ever watch the prequels.
No. They can never stop making Star Wars stuff. They can't ever just leave it alone. But at the same time, they can't ever get away from the original ideas of the first 3 movies. Yeah. You can't have a Star Wars movie without lightsabers and Darth Vaders and Force and X-Wings and, like, there's nothing new you can do, but they keep making them. And the only thing that they, like, The Force Awakens was a remake of the original trilogy.
In a lot of ways, yeah. Well, specifically the original Star Wars, yeah. No, I agree. I mean, I still liked it. I agree it had, like... I hate getting off with Star Wars movies. I want to stay on topic, but let me just say this real quick. The big thing I had a problem with in The Force Awakens is, okay, they built a Death Star into a planet. There's a giant gun built into a whole planet. Yet they're able to send a few small planes, ships, whatever, in there to blow it up. Just like they did for the previous Death Star and the Death Star before that. So it doesn't seem to matter how big of a space station or weapon the Empire makes. It only takes a handful of small aircraft to go in there and do the job. So what's the threat? Why make these huge super weapons if, again, some little thing can...
Well, here's the thing. Even, like, we're talking about the second Star Wars movie from 1980.
Yep.
And we can't talk about it without bringing up the newer ones and the prequels and all that.
I blame you for this.
So some people will be like, yeah, let them make horrible movies now. We'll still have the originals. It doesn't affect them. But it does. It does affect them.
Brittany's sister, she had never seen these movies, I don't know, or not all of them, and she kind of started getting into it, I think, when The Force Awakens comes out, so she's deciding to watch them all. And I think she wanted to watch them in George Lucas's numerical order, and I was saying no. I actually think, first of all, I told her, don't watch the prequels at all. You really don't have to do that. But secondly, if you're really going to insist on doing it, I still say it's better to watch the original trilogy first, then go back. If you know that Anakin Skywalker is Darth Vader, his name is Skywalker, you already know he's clearly Luke's dad, so by the time you get to the real first movie, all the behind-the-scenes stuff is spoiled for you.
Yeah.
You know who the guy is, you know he's Luke's dad. It's the stupidest way to watch the movies. Why would you do that? You find out in the third prequel movie that Luke and Leia are brother and sister. So then when you watch the original trilogy after that, you already know it ruins everything. Don't do it. Don't do it. If you know anybody, friends don't let friends watch the prequel Star Wars trilogy.
So how did she watch them?
Actually, I don't know. All right, let's get back on point. So why did Vader feel the need to freeze Luke to take him to the Emperor? Why not just capture him? And furthermore, part of Boba Fett's reward was to get Han Solo, to take him to Jabba the Hutt. That was one of his things he really wanted. Yet he insists on testing it on Han Solo, where even Boba Fett says, if he doesn't survive, this is going to be a big loss for me. Why not just grab any random civilian, or heck, throw a stormtrooper in there? Why test it on something that's valuable to Boba Fett?
To add drama to when they threw.
Exactly. It's to add drama to for the hero, and also I know the true real reason is because they didn't know if Harrison Ford was going to come back. Harrison Ford was insisting on Han Solo dying even back then, and Lucas didn't want to do it. That's documented, but in a logical point of view, it really doesn't make sense. But anyway. And also, like I said, I just don't understand why Luke would need to be frozen to be taken to the Emperor.
You gotta do what the Emperor says.
Sure, I don't know if he said that.
He said it.
I find it funny, too, that when Lando gets his get the Imperials away, and he's unlocking Chewie's cuffs, he's choking him, and she's like, why should we trust you? I'm thinking, like, the guy just set you guys free. He just gave you guns and took the people that were leading you into the Darth Vader's hands away. Why wouldn't you trust him? You know what I mean? Like,
he also just turned you in.
Yeah, and then he double-crossed him and set them free.
He could triple-cross him.
What I'm getting at is, it seems like that's your best option. I don't understand.
What if something else pops up that you find it more advantageous to turn us in again? How do we know?
I think you're just trying to be argumentative.
No.
Jerk.
No.
Yes. Doing it right now.
No.
You're doing it right now.
I am not.
You're doing it right this second.
I am not.
Yes, you are. I've heard some people say they felt the sword fighting between Luke and Vader is weak in this movie.
That what?
That the lightsaber fight is pretty weak. That it's like not very flashy or cool.
Well, it's them like basically we'll hit our sword, like old style sword fighting. Hit our sword. It wasn't like it didn't need to be flashy. What? Did they need to do 15 flips and run around the room?
I was going to defend it, saying, well, one, Luke is not really all that good yet. For one, two, Vader doesn't want to kill him.
Right.
And frankly, he's trying to have a conversation. Essentially, they're having a conversation over this sword fight. Mm-hmm. So I don't understand why people say that. People are dumb.
Yeah. Well, when stuff starts to get too flashy, that's when it gets ridiculous and stupid.
What do you think the reason is that Luke was able to communicate with Leia when he's hanging upside down, basically on the bottom of Cloud City about to fall?
Well, that wasn't really communicating. It was kind of like sending out an SOS that she was able to pick up through the Force.
Is that not communicating?
No.
So why do you think they made it? Do you think that supports Lucas's claim that this was planned out, that they were, or is it just basically trying to signal that this is the other that Yoda spoke of, that she was able to pick up on that, not anyone else?
Well, I don't think even that he was close to her already from the previous movie and all the stuff they had been through. So if he was going to reach out to somebody, he knew Leia was there.
I guess, but he didn't know that Han Solo was captured yet. So I mean, he's
maybe he did though.
I don't think he does.
He didn't see Han walking with them.
Yeah, but
also, if you can sense people with the Force, he may have sensed that he was trapped.
You see, and this is my problem with Star Wars once again, that there's too much stuff that can be excused away with the Force. He was able to do it because of the Force. The Force, the Force, the Force. I just wish there was clear, definitive rules of what you can and cannot do with the Force, but whatevs. The Star Wars doors are scary. You ever notice how quickly... First of all, they almost... All of them just about come from overhead. And they're like crazy fast.
Yeah, so if you were standing in the doorway and it came down, you'd get chopped in half.
Well, yeah, and like they show when Lando gets Luke down... And they're coming back down the little elevator, and it like barely, their head barely clears it, and it shuts on them. And I was like, dang.
We mentioned Star Trek a second ago, and
no, we didn't.
We talked about the bounty hunter a little bit. There's a Star Trek cameo in this movie.
Star Trek cameo.
The Gorn.
Yeah.
As one of the bounty hunters.
Yeah. Although he has really long arms, you notice that? Like his arms are actually like longer.
I was too busy looking at his Gorn face.
Yeah. I wonder how mad people were. Just open it.
The Gorn identity.
I wonder how mad people were back in 80 when, you know, essentially the idea that Lando's replacing Han Solo. I mean, he's in the Falcon now. He's next to Chewie. They had to wait, what, 2 years? No, 3 years, right? Yeah,
I didn't feel like he was replacing him.
I don't know. I just wonder if fans at the time walked out here thinking like our hero is essentially frozen. Will he survive? You know?
They wondered that.
And then it looks like Lando's replacing him. I wonder how mad people got about that.
No, it was just a cliffhanger.
So R2-D2 knows that the hyperdrive on the Falcon is not working, and he knows how to fix it. He learned this from the Cloud City computer. Yet he's taking the time to try to fix C-3PO's leg instead of doing that. Like you feel like there should be a level of importance on certain things, and that's not as important right now.
Chewie?
No. R2-D2. Once he sees them struggling, then he goes over there and does whatever he does to fix it.
Yeah.
Just kind of weird.
I did like that when Lando got in, and also the hyperdrive still didn't work. He said the same thing that Han did. It's not my fault. Mm-hmm. Like, it was pretty funny.
Yeah.
Call back to that.
Are you ever going to see Solo, you think?
Maybe eventually.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, this movie, you know, so you had the first movie that could have been a standalone movie. They wrapped it up in such a way that had it not done well or well enough, it could have been, you know, they blew up the Death Star. You assume that's almost the entire Imperial army. Obviously, Vader gets away. They all get medals at the end. But this movie clearly sets up for another. I mean, literally, the heroes are in peril. They're, you know, licking their wounds, as they say. It's interesting because I don't know, were there too many movies back then that did these cliffhangers and you had to wait like 3 years for the next one?
Yeah, there were movies. That was a thing that happened.
Was it? Okay. Yeah. I mean,
the reason that you don't know of them, the reason that you don't know of them is because they weren't good enough for the sequels, so it didn't happen.
Gotcha.
You know, one of the things you just said, licking their wounds. I actually saw a video recently where they were comparing The Last Jedi to this movie, mm-hmm. and one of the big complaints is that by the end of this movie, like, your heroes are defeated, they're just barely hanging on. You can tell they've just gone through like the worst things ever, right? Mm-hmm. But they're still just barely hanging on. There's hope, and you can hear it in the music. Is there a new hope? There's an even newer hope than there was the time before. And, you know, even though your heroes are defeated, they're not out. So they're in a bad place. It's that classic second act. But then when you watch The Last Jedi, like, all this horrible stuff happens. Spoilers, everybody dies. And the heroes are going through all this horrible stuff. But then by the end of the movie, they're cheering and whooping and having a good time and making jokes and doing silly stuff still.
I don't even remember that. Who died in...
The entire Rebel force, all except for like 8 people.
Died in The Last Jedi?
Yeah, everybody's dead.
Are you talking about Avengers?
No.
I do not remember that. And I just watched
I'll show you the
movie
video later.
Okay, fine. So, this is kind of a silly thing to mention, but I'm going to mention it anyway. Do you think Earth exists in the Star Wars universe?
No.
Okay. Are they human?
Maybe Middle Earth. Gandalf.
Are they human?
Yes.
Okay, but they're not. It's not. There's no Earth. You don't think?
Right.
Why?
Well, not where they are.
Well, okay. I'm saying they're called humans. They call them humans in this movie, or in these movies. The first three, they say the word human.
Okay.
So humans are from Earth. Why do you say there's no Earth in the
Why are humans from Earth?
Because we are.
I mean, human is just like our specific body type.
Is it?
Yeah, sure. Why not?
Well, anyway, what I was going to say, it's surprising to me that with all the other stuff he's dubbed over, I'm surprised he hasn't had...
Maybe we're from over there then.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Why aren't we as advanced?
Because we're the stupid ones.
Okay. It's funny to me that George Lucas hasn't... It just seems like something he would do, be like, I want to erase all traces of this and have every time someone says the word human or human being, human form, whatever, just have it dubbed over with some fictional word for whatever their species are.
Has he done that?
With other things, yes.
Oh.
Well, I mean, the power level where Obi-Wan turns
it's
off
over 9,000.
He says, yeah, it actually says power level in shields, I think, in the original Star Wars. But then when he specialized it, it actually just says, some gibberish language. Anyway, that's all.
Yeah.
Not that it was irrelevant, I know, but just something I always thought about.
Just final thoughts. So yeah, everybody, this one's highly regarded as the best of all the Star Wars movies. I don't know if I agree with that completely. I do like the original trilogy a lot, and all the other ones can be put in the trash monster compactor area, as far as I'm concerned. But I really liked the first one, A New Hope. I think I actually liked them in the order they came out. So first one would be New Hope, and then as it goes. But it's really good. I liked it. Giving it an A.
Okay. Obviously, this is widely regarded as the best of both the original trilogy and just the best overall. And I think it still pretty much holds that title. They did a lot of different things that I think were really cool. There's a much larger scope. We have way more locations and very different types of locations. You have, a snow world. You have a swamp world. You have the asteroid field. You have, inside of Star Destroyers. You have Cloud City. So it was much more ambitious, and it was very nice. I mean, if you look at the original Star Wars, you have a desert world. Yeah, you have the inside of the Death Star, and then briefly you see Yavin, which is like just very foresty, but like you don't really see much of it. And they just they did a lot more of that. And although there is no like cantina scene essentially in this movie, there are still a lot of unique creatures. However, I feel like you don't see as many. Like, Star Wars I think is known for its alien races, and I always did appreciate that and wish Star Trek would do something more like that. Everyone in Star Trek is essentially a human with a different kind of ear, a different kind of forehead, and whatever. It's kind of boring, but I think it's refreshing that we see the heroes not necessarily win. They're captured, they're tortured, he's got his hand cut off. I mean, Han Solo is actually like captured, and it's kind of cool. Like, and granted, I know that this is like the 2-part, but still, you think even most movies might still have them just barely escape or something to have to go through the next day, the next fight, and I think that's pretty cool and pretty refreshing just to have the heroes in peril and get the crap kicked out of them so much. I also find it interesting that they're separated. Essentially, Luke, for almost the entire movie, is separate from the others. And so you kind of got that, your A story, your B story. And, I mean, there's probably a lot of movies that do that as well, but, like, at least for the first movie, they were very much all together, almost, 90% of it. I do personally, this is my favorite of the Star Wars movies, both original and just overall. I think it is one of the better sci-fi movies. I'm not saying the best, but just one of the best. This and Wrath of Khan, In fact, I almost feel like, Wrath of Khan is akin to The Empire Strikes Back and vice versa. You know, just for their specific franchises. I will give this an A as well.
Okay. Alright, stay tuned next time for my favorite movie of all time.
Yeah?
Yeah.
What is that?
Well, it's gonna be Deuces. Alright, bye.
Bye.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm about to travel through time. I bid you adieu.
Don't stop now! You can't go! All the plants are gonna die!
Where are you going? I've got to return some videotapes.
Bye, Felicia.